I do want to discuss one more thing that happened between Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly, and that was the discussion of potential violence if their beloved Trump is prosecuted. They demand that he be above the law, and if he's not above the law, they appear to be threatening consequences.
So we actually have that part of the conversation. Let's take a look.
If this Judge Chutkan in DC, this federal judge, because we assume Trump's gonna get convicted in that case. I mean, the smart bet would be this DC jury convicts him because they hate him politically. 92% voted for Joe Biden, and she hates him. That if she puts him in jail pending appeal before the election, the country's gonna burn. And then all this blowback, all these people say, oh my God, she's calling for violence. I'm not calling for violence, but there is no way the Trump base is not going to be beside itself with anger at that level of deprivation of being able to simply vote for the candidate of choice. That's what's being taken away here, like to your point.
Well, yeah, and speaking of violence, that's what you're gonna get. And speaking as someone who detests violence, and I've seen war, that's why I detest violence. So I spent a lot of my career trying to argue against more wars because I think violence is the worst thing. But I'm just being honest here. If you leave people no alternative, then what do you think is going to happen?
So it's interesting because it seems to be like they're not calling for violence, but it seems as though they're excusing the possibility of that violence breaking out if things don't go the way the Trump supporters hope that it goes.
No, look, guys.
I mean, come on.
It's obvious. So let me explain. They have plausible deniability. They technically said that they're not for violence, right? So I'm not saying that they didn't. You saw it with your own eyes. But when I give you the analogy, I hope it'll become clear. We were livid about how Bernie got robbed in so many different ways in 2016 during the Democratic primary, including claiming that the superdelegates had already voted when they didn't, funneling money to Hillary Clinton through the state parties. We gave all the different injustices, right? But at no point did we say, now if Bernie doesn't win, of course there would be violence, wink. Obviously there would be significant violence towards Hillary Clinton, wink, but we're not in favor of violence. We never said any of that, because it was absurd. Why would you do violence? What an absurd, that's not a rational reaction to a political dispute. But here, they're bringing it up like, you better not. And we're telling these people, I guess you have no choice left. We don't want violence, but if you were to touch our beloved, then I guess people would have no choice. They're triggering them, they're priming them to do the violence.
Look, at the very least, they are justifying the violence if and when it happens, right? It's, well, if you're gonna go after Trump for the crimes that he may have committed, and he gets, he's convicted of these crimes, well, then you have no choice. You're gonna have to deal with the violence that erupts as a result of that. No, how about there are consequences for your actions, both for Donald Trump and anyone who decides to engage in rioting or violence if they don't like the outcome of his cases. And by the way, like, what does this really mean? Like, to take a step back and take Trump out of it entirely and think about what they're really communicating. What they're communicating is our justice system should operate based on mob rule. Okay, who cares about the crimes that have been committed? Who cares if there was a fair prosecution? Who cares if the individual being prosecuted is convicted of those crimes based on the evidence that's been presented by the prosecutors? If the mob does not want that individual to be prosecuted and convicted, the justice system must listen to the mob.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And imagine if the other side did that. No, I mean, I guess you could convict Hunter Biden, but that would obviously trigger us attacking you and maybe killing you. But hey, I'm generically against violence, but I'm saying if you come after Hunter Biden, obviously we'd have to, people would have to resort to violence and maybe kill you. Like, no, that's not obvious. That's ridiculous. That's insane. Why are you even having that conversation? Last two things here. If you notice, whenever they talk about Donald Trump's criminal cases, they never talk about the actual evidence.
Of course not.
And they don't. So they don't
lose audience members.
Yeah, they don't say like, oh, here's the evidence here. Here's why he's innocent, and that's why this is wrong. They just say, well, obviously he shouldn't be prosecuted. Meaning, our leaders should be above the law. And this is from the party that said that they were in favor of rule of law and law and order my whole life. Apparently they don't care about it at all. And the last thing is they call against generic violence, but they don't call out that violence. Like for example, if somebody on our side, and we've done polls that show Democrats are inclined in a certain direction, I say, do not ever do that. No matter how angry you are, do not ever do political violence. In this case, well, we're against violence and wars, but we understand obviously if the violence were to happen in this specific case. No, this is they're priming an audience already ready for violence according to the polling. And they're saying, you know what to do if they come after us. Let's go hurt them.
And look, the worst part about all of this, outside of what they're priming people for, is that they're doing it even though they themselves despise Trump. Even though Tucker Carlson clearly despises Trump based on the messages that we just read to you, right? I don't think Megyn Kelly's a huge fan of Donald Trump. They had a huge conflict in the beginning of the 2016 presidential election. He said some disgusting misogynistic things about her publicly, but it is beneficial to her career to parade around pretending as though she has no problem with Trump. It is beneficial for Tucker Carlson's career to pretend as though he doesn't absolutely despise Donald Trump, even though he does. And that's what bothers me the most, that they're willing to sell out the future of the country in order to get a little bit of short-term gain for their careers.
Yeah, there's almost no honesty in media. It's so dispiriting. Anna and I talked about it this morning. It's so frustrating. You see corporate media do hatchet jobs. You see right-wing media do this. Megyn Kelly was very right-wing when she was on Fox News. Then she mitigated her positions, went to NBC and pretended to be mainstream. Then when NBC let her go, for a while she continued to be a little bit moderate, although leaning right-wing, right? But now my guess is all of her audience is right-wing. So she's now serving that audience, and she's gone further and further right-wing and further pro-Trump, even though she used to hate Trump. Why? Because that's how she makes money now. You got to give them what they want. They want Trump, they want threats of violence, they don't care about the law, so you give them what they want. They like Tucker Carlson, and you know Tucker Carlson from the Fox News days. I'd be surprised if they were friends back then, but now all of a sudden he's on the show and they're all going in the same direction. And Tucker Carlson, a wild liar. I hate him. He says privately on the show, he says, I love him. Because that's who they are, man. They don't care about you. They don't care about the truth. For them, it's an acting gig. They're in entertainment, they're not in news. And they're like, okay, let's entertain people. Oh, you want violence and Trump and law breaking? Yes, we're in favor of that. Money, give me money, give me money. And so that's what you're seeing here, and it's sad, and that's what a lot of media in America has devolved to.
That's why Americans, depending on their political loyalties, I guess, live in alternate realities.
Absolutely. If you watch Megyn Kelly's show or Tucker Carlson's show, you have no idea what's actually happening. But to be fair, if you're a Democrat and you're watching cable news, you think numbers don't matter. And I can't get into all the things that the mythology that Democrats believe, but they've been told, no, numbers and facts and science doesn't matter anymore. Whoever the leader is, we support them blindly. And so this is destroying the fabric of our country because no one's willing to call out their own side, be honest, and actually do news reporting. As you know from us, we don't mind commentary and perspective. There's nothing wrong with that. But you cannot play around with the facts, except almost everyone does. And it's so frustrating.